How about now, Perry?
I think you're where you're supposed to be.
Okay, that took forever today, and it's not the view I want, so I can't see the next slide. So this ought to be interesting. Hello, everybody. I am Ann Ball. I'm a program director at Maine Development Foundation. And a few notes about today. If you wouldn't mind signing in the chat, please, just with your name, your organization or property name, and your email address, I would appreciate that. And as I mentioned, we are recording the meeting today, and it'll be made available by request after our meeting. And the other thing we're going to do today is we have a break in the middle, and then we have for questions, and then we have questions at the end. And we would like to say, because we have such a big crowd, to please type your questions in the chat when they come up. And then we will take a break at, like I said, in the middle, and then at the end, and we will address all of your questions at that time. We anticipate the whole presentation lasting 60 to 90 minutes. As I said, I'm Ann Ball. I'm here with Christy Chapman-Mitchell from the Maine Historic Preservation Commission. If Christy, you want to wave. And I'm also here with Perry Williams from the Maine Downtown Center. And clearly I should have let Perry advance the slides. So we're ready to dive in and look forward to seeing your questions in the chat. And again, if you just arrived, please put your name, your organization or property name, and your email address in the chat. So REvitalizeME Downtown, Revitalize Maine, is supported through the Paul Brune Historic Revitalization Grant Program administered by the National Park Service at the Department of Interior. So MDF, Maine Development Foundation, applied to run this sub-grant program. And that's what we are here today. We are opening the program to applications, and we are going to dive into details. So we are going to look at the purpose of the funding. We're going to dive into eligibility, the timeline, the program requirements, scoring, community engagement projects, the application budget, and then how this grant program works with historic preservation tax credits. And Christy, who's here with me, is really our sort of agency partner, our regulatory partner, our lifeline to the National Park Service and the Department of the Interior, whereas MDF and the Maine Downtown Center is really the grant making and logistics and reporting and writing checks, more of the administrative side of this program. So the application is available and is live at this time. And you can see the directions on that slide to take a look at it. Perry, what platform is the application in? Is it in Gravity Forms?
It is. They should be able to apply directly through the website through our Gravity Forms plugin.
Thank you. The purpose. This grant program, which again is connected to the Paul Brune program, is really about driving economic development in historic properties that will be for preservation, restoration, rehabilitation, and they are in the downtowns that are served by the Maine Downtown Center. And we will go over which communities those are. There is your list of communities. These are nationally accredited Main Street communities, and they are our affiliate communities that are eligible to apply. Unfortunately, Woodford's Corner is one of our affiliates, but they are too big population-wise, but everybody else in our current downtown program does qualify for this program. So who can apply? What type of organization? Nonprofit organizations, government, educational, and private property owners. This is one of the very rare opportunities for privately owned properties who own buildings in the National Register of Historic Places that are in one of those downtowns that we just went over. I think I'm passing this over to you, Christy.
Okay, and thank you very much, and welcome to everybody. In order to apply, the property must meet all of the following conditions. The first is that it must be listed in the National Register of Historic Places. And the key word here is listed, not eligible to be listed, but listed. It also needs to be a non-residential building or a building not used for religious purposes. Now, when we say non-residential, it can be a mixed-use building, such as a commercial building that has residential units on an upper store. But it cannot be just a residential building, even if it's a rental building. It has to be located in one of the 22 specified communities that Anne mentioned earlier. And it has to be a project that has the potential to catalyze continued investment in the historic downtown. Now, we will say this probably several times during the presentation, but make sure you take a look at the eligibility requirements in the grant manual. It's very important that you meet all of these conditions, and this is just kind of a quick summary of what we're doing. Next slide. So the projects are going to be brick and mortar type projects. They're also known as development projects. These are the ones that preserve and protect the significance and integrity of historic properties. The projects will range in funding from $50,000 to about $200,000. And they can be part of a larger ongoing project, but we are looking for discrete projects that can be funded between $50,000 and $200,000 that can be started and finished within the grant period. And
so the little bit about the timeline, here we are at the pre-application webinar, and we are offering two other opportunities for what we're calling open office hours, which is a chance for you to come on Zoom. We have no planned agenda. It is just to answer questions that you may have on process or application. And those pre-application webinars are on June 2nd and July 1st. And those are the Zoom links. They're also in the grant manual, which is on our website. And Christy, would you care to comment on the June 15th deadline? Because that's an important one.
Sure. Actually, Perry or Anne, can you go back one slide?
Yeah.
So when we talk about development projects, bricks and mortar projects, for this program, these projects need to have been developed to such a point that drawings, plans, and specifications are completed. These have to be shovel-ready projects. That means that the architects have been hired, the plans and specifications, the blueprints are ready, and these are ready to go. These aren't projects that are in concept phase, and they aren't projects that are in kind of speccing phase, or I should say schematic phase. These are projects that are really ready to go. And so one of the things that we are offering is to review those plans and drawings up until June 15th to make sure that what you have in mind meets the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties, which is one of the requirements of the grants. So let me say this again. In order to apply, you have to have plans and specifications and blueprints that are at least 75% complete, and they have to be submitted with your application. What you also have the opportunity to do is send those plans and specifications to the Maine Historic Preservation Commission in advance of submitting them with your application and ask the commission to review them to make sure that they are going to meet all of the requirements of the grant. If they don't meet the requirements of the grant, you have some time to make changes. Or you—
Coastal Interiors, can I help you?
There's somebody speaking. You might want to—
We've muted them.
Yep, okay. if you don't meet the requirements of the grants, you'll have some time to make changes. So we encourage you to send your plans and specifications and your blueprints into us as soon as possible. We will take up to 30 days to take a look at those and review those, and then we'll send them back to you with comments.
Great, thank you, Christy. And then the final application is due August 14th by 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And that'll be done electronically through our portal on our website with the application. These are the timelines for actually notification. We will take a quick look at the applications in those first 5 days when we have them in hand to see if you are missing anything, and we will let you know, and you will have a quick turnaround to get us back what is needed. And then no later than October 15th, we will have award notification letters and grant agreements mailed. We are required to have the National Park Service review all of our suggested awardees. And so there's quite a bit of lag time with that. And I'm thinking that, you know, these dates should be secure, but I'm not going to lie. There are things that are changing with staffing at the federal level, and that may require an adjustment. But this is our plan. This is what we intend to do. We'll have an informational webinar in October. Grantee paperwork will be due back to us with a signed grant agreement. But we also have the NEPA review, which Christy will talk about in a little bit, and Section 106 reviews. And that's something else that has to go to the Park Service for review. And that can take 3 to 4 months. So you can't start work until that paperwork is back. Christy, do you want to add anything on that at this point, or?
No, we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
But as Anne said, there's a fair amount of paperwork that gets done even after we can tell you that we want to give you a grant. There's a lot of paperwork that gets done at the federal level before work can be started. So you need to keep that in mind when you're putting together your timeline for the grant application. It can be 3 to 4 to 5 months.
Yep, great. And the other thing that I'm not going to go in through all those reporting, but the projects that you're applying for, the work needs to be complete by August 1st, 2027. And that's really a hard stop date. So when you're thinking about your project, please be aware of what the timeline you have to get it done in. So program requirements, we're going to go into details of some of these things like the match and the National Register, which we've already mentioned, but the things that you're required to do as a participant or a grantee in this program. Christy, I'm turning it over to you for preservation agreements.
Okay, thank you. One of the requirements of the grant, and this is a requirement that comes down from the National Park Service, is that a successful grant recipient will enter into a preservation agreement, which is also another name, also known as an easement, with the Maine Historic Preservation Commission for a period of time. This preservation agreement will allow for consultation between the commission and the property owner for any subsequent changes or alterations to the property for a period of 5 to 10 years. Before the agreement is signed, there is a period during which character defining features and property conditions are documented and recorded, and that documentation goes with the easement or the preservation agreement and provides a baseline from which we do consultation. That documentation is then updated when the project is over. Next slide, please. So the preservation agreement, when the project is over and the agreement is in place, basically sets up a period of consultation. If you need to or want to do something different on the building, you would consult with the commission, and the commission would review your project idea and make a determination of whether it falls within the Secretary of the Interior standards. If the commission approves it, that's fine. The project is implemented, the documentation is updated, and everything goes back to stasis. If the project needs to be revised in consultation with the commission, we will make suggestions and work with you on how to do that. And we'll work with you until the project meets the appropriate standards. Then we give the approval in writing, and the project gets implemented, and the agreement gets updated, and the project goes back to stasis. So this goes on, if you next slide, please, for a period of 5 to 10 years based on how much the grant award is. And again, this is something that is required by the National Park Service in return for the use of federal money. It's there to make sure that the investment of taxpayer funds is well used and well preserved into the future. Next slide, please.
Go for it.
Another requirement of the REvitalizeME grant program that comes down through the Park Service is that of the match. So for every grant, there is a requirement of a non-federal match of 20% of the total grant request. So if you are applying for a grant of $100,000, then you will be required to also provide $10,000 as your match. So that would allow you to have a $110,000 project. Okay.
20. I think 20%.
Oh, I'm sorry, 20%, $120,000 project, right? So, so again, you have to provide 20% of a non-federal match. Community development block grants are the only type of federal funds that can be used as match. I don't know how many of those are out there these days, but that match can be used, usually cash match. Occasionally it can be volunteer labor that can be used, or volunteer donations. But that match has to be documented and tracked just as the same as your grant funds and your grant expenditures. So that's something you have to take into consideration as you put your budget together. Okay, so 20% match. As we mentioned earlier, properties for this program have to be listed in the National Register of Historic Places or have already been nominated to the National Register at the time of application. Essentially, what that means is that the next time a property can be nominated to the register is July 25th, 2025. That's the next opportunity for a nomination to go to the register. Today is the deadline to submit the first draft of that nomination to the commission for review. Essentially, unless you have already submitted that draft to the National Register reviewer, the deadline has passed. Today is it. If you have questions about that, we can talk about that during the question and answer period. But unless something is already in process, we are looking at listed properties only. And that can be listed individually, or it can be a property listed within a historic district, as long as it contributes to the historic district. Either one of those is fine. Now, there are two reviews that come from the National Park Service. The first is the National Environmental Policy Act, and this requires federally funded projects to be reviewed to see if they have significant impact on the environment. Very few of these projects ever have a significant impact that makes any sort of creates any sort of problem. Usually what happens is that, next slide please, is that they tell us something like there's migratory birds or endangered species in the area. And sometimes we have to be cognizant of that, or you would have to be cognizant of that during your construction. So there is a worksheet that you will have to fill out as part of the application that we then have to send to the National Park Service. It can take a little while. We are hearing now 3 months for them to review this worksheet. So that's part of the timing that happens after the grant is awarded to you. Next slide, please. There's also a Section 106 review, which is a review to make sure that there's no historic properties that are adversely affected by the project. And that could be your property, or it could be a property adjacent to yours, or close to yours in a historic district or in a neighborhood. So that also can take a number of months to complete. So please make sure in your timeline that these are planned for. Again, these are things that happen behind the scenes, but can take a little while. Next slide.
The project sign. So these are, development construction projects, as we've been talking about, and the National Park Service requires a sign. And we have templates, in your grant manual. And if you want to use the shield, which you can see on this sign, you have to ask the National Park Service for permission to do that. It's not required, but we need to send, your project sign plans to the National Park Service for approval. We've never had a problem. They just check the wording and check whether you have permission to use the sign and the shield, So that is required. Photography, I'm going to let Christy talk about it, because this is something that you have to do for the application. We want to see photography, and then during the grant project, we want to see before, during, and after, and then you have final reporting photography, and then I think preservation agreement photography.
Right.
Christy.
Right. This is something, the cost of photography is an allowable cost in your grant agreement, and so we look to make sure and when you put in your application that you are putting in the cost of photography. So you will have to send us photographs as part of your application. Make sure they are good, clear photographs, interior and exterior, and send them to us as I think you upload them separately, right? Is that Anne?
Yes,
they're not as part of a PDF or anything. You upload them as TIFFs or JPEGs.
Well, I'm going to let Perry answer that. It's in the application where it says to upload the photos, and it's through WeTransfer. Perry, still?
No, I believe it is a PDF.
It is
multiple requirements.
Okay.
It'll be strung
okay.
in.
Okay,
So
thanks.
So for the application, then they're uploaded as PDFs. For the reporting at the end of the project, I believe that you have to send JPEGs individually. But I know that for the building condition and character defining feature form that goes with the easement, you have to do JPEGs. And that photography is often done by a historic preservation consultant who is hired to do the preservation agreement and the building condition feature form. And that is a allowable cost as well. Because this is documentation, we look for some photography that's going to be really well done and capture both the character defining features, which are the historic elements that really capture the the important aspects of the building. And we need those photographs to be very clear and sharp and well done. So the photographs for the applications need to be well done and clear. The photographs for the documentation at the end, when you're reporting out, need to be really well done and clear. The ones for the building conditions assessment and character defining features really have to be the best that you can make them. So take a little time and think about who's going to do your photography, whether you're going to have a preservation consultant come in and do the work. And that cost, again, can be put into the budget. It's not usually a huge amount, but you make sure that you include those costs into your budget.
But for the application, you do not have to hire a professional. It just needs to be, we use the word skilled, meaning someone's just doing a good job.
Right, right.
Procurement. This is a Christie slide.
This is an important thing to know now, and it's an important thing you're going to have to consider if you get a grant. The Park Service and the federal government wants you to do competitive procurement. One thing you really can't do is go out and sign a contract for your services before you get the grant. And you have to go out to bid for these grants. Now, most of the projects, because the grants go from 50,000 to 200,000, they fall under what is called a small purchase. And small purchases mean that you will have to seek at least 3 bids once you get the grant award. That can be through an RFP, request for proposals, or it could be through a more relaxed request for bid, where you can do that through email or pinpointing different vendors. But you have to make a record of who you've contacted, what you've asked them to bid on, and what their responses are. If you enter into a contract before the grant is awarded, you would have to show in retrospect that you had contacted 3 people and asked them to bid on the project. In addition, what they bid on has to reflect exactly what is awarded in the grant. And that may change slightly or even more than slightly from the time your application is submitted to the time that the grant is awarded, depending on the amount of the award and also if any changes need to be made to meet the Secretary of the Interior standards. So the big picture here is don't enter into any contracts and don't secure any contractors until after the grant is made. Next slide, please.
Is this the last procurement slide? I just wanted to add something. I can't remember.
No, there's one more.
Oh yeah, okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to add that sometimes in Maine, because we just don't have a large volume of skilled workforce in the preservation trades, you may solicit 5 bids and you might only get 1. And that's okay. You just need to document it. You just need to show me, actually, that you did send this out and you received no responses. We have had that happen with other grantees. That's all.
And sometimes also, if you're in the middle of a big project and you already have a contractor who's been working with you for a year and you want to use that contractor to continue the project, there are ways that we have been able to work with the National Park Service in some cases to show that it would be counterproductive to go out to bid for something. So if you have documentation that you've done bids in the past, be prepared to find those. Sometimes if something is very specialized and there's only 1 or 2 people in the whole state who do this kind of work, we can waive going out to bid in those circumstances. But in general, you do need to go out to bid. So you just need to talk with us if you think you are under a special circumstance.
Yes, and we have had grantees that have had contractors that were considered their contractor of record, and we have been able to collect the needed documentation so that you can go forward using that contractor. But as Christy said, it's like, well, when you first solicited them, did it go out to a competitive bid? And show us the work they've done to date so that we know it is your contractor of record, but it's not an insurmountable situation.
That's right. And here's another thing that makes working with the federal government a little difficult sometimes. And that is that there is a maximum hourly rate that can be charged to this grant. And it's not as high as what a lot of people would like to charge. It is 120% of a federal civil service GS-15 step 10 salary. Basically, there is a salary table that says what the maximum a person can make at that level for the state of Maine. We multiply that by 120% and come out with the figures that are on the bottom line here, which is $114.63 if you are in York, Cumberland, Sagadahoc, or Androscoggin counties, or $109.86 if you're in the rest of Maine. There's a pay table that you can look at that we have up here on the screen, and we can put that in the chat maybe, Perry. I don't know if you can do that.
Yeah, we should be able to.
But if anybody charges more than that per hour, it can't be charged to the grant and it can't be charged to the match. So what do? There's 2 options. You can either ask your contractor or your architect or whoever you're paying if they would write it off, pro bono part. Or you can ask them to give you a lump sum for labor and not break it down and not show an hourly rate. And that is what usually happens. Instead of giving you a estimate or a bid that shows that they're charging you $150 an hour for X number of hours, you just get them to show you a bid with a total estimate of labor, and they don't break it down. And then when they bill you, they don't break it down by hours. They just give you a labor cost. That way we don't have an hourly rate. So this is something very important to keep in mind when you're filling out your application, when you're soliciting estimates, because you do want to solicit estimates. You can't have hourly rates over this amount. Okay, next slide.
Questions? I don't know if we have any questions in the chat. Perry.
I saw 2.
Great. I'm actually opening it right now. Let's see.
I have a question that says,
The first one I see is from Elaine. Is that where you are, Perry?
I'm trying to find it. Is it does that include contributing building?
Yes, right. Yes. Yes, Elaine, the answer is yes. If a building is a contributing building in a National Registered District, that does qualify. That is considered eligible, as well as being individually listed.
Yes, but it does need to be a National Register listed district, not a locally designated district.
Right. I have it open now, Perry. So this is a question from Harda Biddeford. My question is related to a vacant property in the district that meets the eligibility requirements. It is in white box condition. Would a project that builds out 1/4 of the interior of that building meet the specs for this grant? Okay, I'm trying to understand. Delilah, is that question from you?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so what a
Is this
project-
is this the marble block?
It is not.
Okay. So white box condition means that it is all of the interior, the studs have been, it's got like drywall on the inside and nothing else.
That's right.
Yeah, as long as the building retains its significance and integrity on the exterior and is still contributing, I think it would be a candidate.
Thanks.
Great. A couple other questions. Elaine asking about administering the state bond funded historic community buildings grant program, also due in August, which has language very similar to this application. Could an applicant apply for the same building to both grant programs?
That yes, August is not when the grants are going to be due. That has been postponed most likely into 2026 due to lack of administrative funding. So that, first off, I just want to make sure that you're clear on that. The eligibility requirements are similar for the two grants. Let me just say, yes, you can apply for both. However, you cannot use the REvitalizeME grant as match for the Historic Community Buildings grant. It has to be something separate.
Great. The second question from Elaine is about the match. The 20% match that is required is based on your grant amount you request. It is 20% of the grant amount that you request. That is the math, and we have a budget slide coming up which shows that, and I don't think there's anything else to add to that. Elaine, take yourself off mute if that is not clear. Okay. Hello, Kathy. Kathy asks, if we've received funding through MDF in the past and had documentation of historic conditions and Section 106 done, do these need to be redone? They're pretty current.
Yes, Section 106 gets done every time there's federal funding. NEPA gets done every time as well. And we would just do update of the documentation to reflect any changes since the last time it was documented.
Great. And Andrew, my question is related to larger projects. In a development that has total costs of 20 to 30 million, can the MDF grant be used in such development to preserve specific aspects of the property?
It could be used for a specific project within a greater development project. So, you know, if you've got a 20 million to $30 million project, you know, we could help you replace a roof or something.
Right, a specific project,
you know,
within the project. And we've had a number of projects that
yes,
have used the funding that way. The spinning mill in Skowhegan, a much larger development project. At the time, our funding covered plans and specifications, and they applied for that, and just to get the property listed on the National Register. That was a different time, but my point is it can be for smaller aspects of an overall project. Absolutely. Eric, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. This has been super interesting. I own a building in downtown Rockland that's over 200 years old. It's in a historic district, but I don't actually know if it's considered a contributing building or not. I suspect that it is, just sort of by the nature of the building, but and the fact that I was referred to this program. How would I go about, confirming that, or
Finding
who's the authority on determining whether a building is considered contributing or not?
Sure. Reach out to my colleague, Michael Goebel-Bain, GOEBEL-BAIN. His phone number is 287
Okay,
5435.
We'll
And
put his info in the chat too.
yeah,
great. Thank
and he is the National Register Coordinator, and he can look up whether your building contributes to the historic district in Rockland.
Okay, and if it doesn't, by chance, is there anything, in order to, I guess, have it qualify as a building that is contributing, is that basically going through the nomination process that was discussed earlier? Or
Right, you might want to do that. You might want to see about doing that for future grant rounds, but it would be too late for this one. But there's Historic Preservation Fund grants, there's the state bond grants, so you might want to talk about eligibility for future grants, but it wouldn't help you out with this
Okay.
round of REvitalizeME.
Sure, thanks.
And also, Eric, Rockland is one of our National Main Street communities, and we get calls regularly from property owners to help navigate what Christy was just laying out. So feel free to reach out to us if this doesn't work for this program. Thanks, Elise, for putting Michael's information in the chat for us. Mike Line, would a project that has approved part 1 and part 2, but is still finalizing the individual listing process be eligible? Ooh.
Well, it depends on if that project is planning on being presented in July of this year. So I don't know. I don't know what's scheduled for the July commission meeting. If it's on the schedule for July, then yes. If it's not on the schedule for July, then no.
Okay, thank you. I'll check with our consultant.
Yep.
And he could also check with Michael to see if
You
it's
could also
on.
check with Michael.
Same address, Mike, in the chat there. Okay, we are going to keep going here and keep adding your questions to the chat. That was really helpful. A few other things that we're going to go over: scoring criteria, the community engagement project, the budget, and historic tax credits before we wrap. The scoring criteria. So this isn't our scoring matrix that our reviewers use, but these are those reminders from a grant program of what you really need to think about. You really need to make sure that your narratives are thorough and complete and answering the questions. Have a second or third reader read the grant question and read your response. And don't ever make assumptions about what the reviewers know or do not know. The reviewers are made up of representatives from Christie's office, from MDF, and the Maine Downtown Center Advisory Council, and preservation professional and economic development or real estate professional. Like, that is the group that it will be reviewing the grant application. There is a question about historic significance, and that is scored points, and those points are nothing that you can do to make it what it is or isn't. That is something that Christie's office determines based on whether it is a National Historic Landmark, which we don't have that many in Maine, or if it is listed in the National Register. So if you have additional questions, it lays out the scoring in great detail in the grant manual. It says, like, this is the question and it's this many points. So there's plenty more information about that. The community engagement project is really kind of the fun and creative part of this grant program. And when we have applied to the National Park Service, we really feel like the story of these projects, telling the story of why preservation matters, to our communities and to economic development is not known enough. Like if you ask someone on the street, they don't know that historic preservation really does drive economic development. So we have a section where we want you to come up with a community engagement project. And these are two. That one is the Spinning Mills project with Bigelow Brewing. They actually developed this preservation IPA beer, and then they had a QR code. So if you were drinking the beer, you could actually find out like, oh, what is this project and why does it matter to Skowhegan? And then over in Rumford, on the left, it was an amazing art project with the local schools really saying like, what do you think this site could look like? Like draw what you think, you know, the future of these buildings could be. And it was a postcard project, and it was a really wonderful community art project. We've also had more traditional things like video projects, walking tours and walking tour brochures of like how the building fits into a historic district. So creativity is what we encourage, and it is a requirement that 5% of your match go towards this project, plus whatever else it would cost to actually execute it. But this is a chance to be creative. Christy, anything you want to add on community engagement project?
The real important part here is engagement. We want you to be talking with your community, with the people around you about why preservation matters. This is not just, you know, it's not just a poster project. It's about getting out there and talking with people, about having conversations and getting people to think and to respond to, you know, what you're doing and why it matters. So yeah, be creative, get out there. And the other thing is, this is not and cannot be used as a fundraising project. This is not, we can't use, you cannot, it's not an allowable cost as a fundraising project. So keep that in mind as well.
And we are welcome. We've had to guide people like in a different direction. So feel free to talk to us about that if you need to. The budget. Yep. Give thought to it. Plan it out. We do have a slide we were having a little trouble with. That's why. Oh, Perry, did you fix it again? Looks good. All right. We were having trouble with this slide, which is why all of the technology was mixed up when we started. This is the form. In the past, we've had like 2 or 3 forms. We have narrowed it down to 1 form. And I really want you to just take a look at this. Think about if you have questions. These are also the kind of things that you can come to our optional Zooms, office hours. Really, it is, what are you asking for? The servants, the action, or the item? Who is doing it? You know, the name of the firm. And you see here, it says hours and cost per hour, but it might be a fee for service, as Christy was talking about earlier. It might not be an hourly rate. And then is there something that's considered match? Is it cash match? Is it another grant source, or is it in kind? Meaning the contractor says, I'm going to donate $1,000 of my $10,000 fee. And then that $1,000 would go there. And then what is your total request of funds that will go to these items? And then what is the total project cost? So that is the budget. It is simple. It is autofills. Perry, anything on like the technology piece of filling this out on the grant application itself?
Not really. It can be downloaded as like the auto populate Excel spreadsheet, so it should be fairly simple.
Right, it totals for you. You don't have to do the math. But yes, you can certainly download it to, you know, formulate it over here before you enter it. And then at the bottom, this is just a great little graphic here that, you know, these figures, both, you know, your sum of your match and your total grant request should add up to the total of the project costs. So that's what that is, just to help you out there. So that's the budget. And then, hold on. Narrative, you also have an opportunity to give us more information through a budget narrative. Anybody who's had federal grants certainly knows this. You always have the accompanying budget narrative, and it's really just to give more information to support those figures that you've put into the budget. And it also is a chance to really give us more information, like the plans and specifications have, met Secretary of the Interior standards. And, we have all these things that are how we got to the point of establishing our figures. 3 estimates, an average was taken of the 3 estimates, or the highest estimate was used to formulate this budget number, those kind of things. So this is just more details on your figures. And is that it?
That's it. I just want to, can you go back one slide?
Sure.
There's one thing we didn't talk about, Anne, and is the estimates. It is very important that you get estimates, as many as you can, for these projects. And sometimes people will be a little hesitant to give you the cost of an estimate, because it does take them time to put that together, and we understand that. One thing to know is that because you're going to be working with plans and specifications that are pretty close to done, and because you're going to have, drawings and everything, you're going to be able to send those out and ask for ballpark estimates. And that's going to be very helpful to you. You may not have at this point bid specification level drawings, but they're going to be, they're going to be pretty close to complete by the time that you put your applications in. The commission will review your plans and specifications at 75%. And I think, did we say that they need to be at 90% to submit with the application?
Yeah, they can have it at 75% for your office to review, but when they submit the application, it should be 90%.
90%. So you should be able to get pretty good estimates when you send them out to contractors. So make sure that you do that. And, contractors do reply to estimates on a pretty regular basis, but this, you won't be able to necessarily, you won't necessarily be accepting the estimate bids later, because the contract that you sign with MDF may be a little bit different from what you put together in the estimate. So an estimate's an estimate, an RFP is going to be a little bit different. So just keep that in mind.
Great. So couple reminders, the grant manual and the application are at mdf.org. Any questions on the application? I am your person. As much as I love Christy and she knows a lot, start with me. And if it becomes more technical or regulatory, I will go to her. But we're the frontline person for the grant program. Reminder of the optional Zoom hours. Let us know if you want a recording. Perry, we will send out the slide deck to everybody who has registered, so you will have that. But let us know what you have for questions. And I'm going to stop sharing. Look at that great picture. And I see Mike Line with his hand up, so we might as well start there.
Forgive me if this was covered earlier and I missed it, but Christy, in those budget estimates, are contingencies allowed at 5 or 10% or no?
No, federal, when we do the contract, there's no contingencies allowed. If you want to put them in your estimate, sure. If you want to put them in your application, but they're going to come out of the budget when we do the contract.
Thank you.
Not an allowable cost for the federal government.
So sorry, Mike. Other questions? And yes, Patrick, you have your hand up.
Hi, Anne. Thanks for this. So I don't think you spoke about the historic tax credit piece. Do you want
Oh,
to talk about that?
I knew something was missing. Thank you for flagging that.
Yeah.
I'm going to let Christy talk about it because historic tax credit projects can apply, but it has to be a different, a specific project within it. But I will let Christy talk about that.
You cannot double dip. So
Right.
if you have a historic tax credit project, you cannot apply for grant funding for any part of the tax credit project that's going to get tax credits. So if you've got a building and you're rehabbing the whole thing, you can rehab the whole thing except for the roof and apply to do the roof with the grant. But you can't take tax credits on the roof. And you have to keep them separate. So there can be no overlap. So it can be a concise, separate, it can be its own piece of fruit on a tree, but it cannot overlap at all with the tax credits. Okay.
And that specific example is actually a real life example from the previous time we did this program. As the applicant said, I'm not going to use tax credits on the roof, but I'm going to apply for this grant program for the roof.
And that was okay. Yep. So, but you can't, you're not going to do a window survey and split the cost of the windows. You're not going to do window replacement and split the cost of the window replacement 50% with tax credits and 50% with the grant. That's not going to work. Okay. So it's got to be a very discrete project. If you have a project in mind, you should talk to us about it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, Patrick, are you good with that?
Yeah. I mean, you say concise, but could you present, I don't want to say hodgepodge, but items that that didn't quite qualify for historic tax credits? Could you lump them together as a project?
Well, if they didn't qualify for tax credits, they may not qualify for this grant either. So what doesn't qualify for tax credits? Landscaping, new construction, that kind of thing. This is a rehabilitation, restoration, preservation grant. So most of the things that won't qualify for tax credits either don't qualify because they don't meet the Secretary of the Interior standards, or they're not allowable costs. Chances are good they probably wouldn't be allowable costs for this project either.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Pull off something of your tax credit projects. It could be worth it. I know it's not, $200,000 or $100,000 is still $100,000. Other questions? There's one in the chat from Mandy. If you decide to do an historic tax credit project later on, will this grant preclude you from doing a full HTC project?
You could not take tax credits on on any work that you've done with this grant.
But theoretically, you wouldn't want to do that anyway.
Because the work's already been done.
The work's already done. Exactly.
But you could not take tax credits on that work.
Right. Great. Other questions? Okay. So it's a sizable group. So what I'm going to do is just dismiss everybody who's got to go, and I will hang out for a bit if other people have things they want to ask. But the formal part of the meeting is officially over, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Good luck, everyone.
And can I ask about the budget?
Yes, Patrick.
so is the budget only asking for the specific project that we're applying for, or would it be best to showcase the entire building, the entirety of the work on the building?
That is a great question.
You
Um,
want, can I jump in?
Go ahead. I was
You
hoping
want to
get the
be
budget.
able to show what you're going to accomplish within the grant period. So
Okay.
you know, if you've got a really big, I mean, we love to see that this is leveraging, you know, millions of dollars in matching funds, but realistically, you're going to have a year and a half to complete this project. And if you show that the overmatch is going to be hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, and that's what we expect, then you're going to kind of be expected to finish all that in the grant period. So don't do that. Just give yourself a project that you can finish in the grant period.
Okay.
But I mean, I think even one step deeper, Patrick, if I'm understanding your question, is like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example. We keep going back to the roof. It's the roof overall, the roof and the parapet and, you know, certain materials all makes it a $500,000 project. But you're really only applying for even maybe the architectural details of the roof to be restored. And that's less. So, but the whole thing can be done in that period, as Christy said. I mean, to me, I would want to see the whole budget of like, this is the whole roof, but what he's applying for is this aspect of the roof.
Yeah.
Does that
But
make
not,
sense?
Okay.
but not the whole building rehab.
Exactly.
Not the whole
But not
building.
the whole
Okay.
building
Well,
rehab.
yeah, that was my question, because it's about a $2.5 million project. So I didn't know if you needed to see the entirety of the
No, but I think that
building rehab, or
no, not from a budget standpoint, but the
Okay.
narrative of like, this is a multi-year, 3 to 5 year project that's leveraging money over here, here, and here. And this is a piece that's going to do this. I mean, make the case for the big project and its overall impact and timeline within the community. I think the reviewers love to hear that narrative, right?
Yes.
Well, I guess the challenge is determining whether or not, I mean, I'm not scoffing at $200,000 upwards of
No,
that,
I know,
but
I know.
the timeline is tricky because I'm more or less shovel ready. And the timeline pushes me past when I plan to start construction.
Mhm. Right.
Because that's the challenge. And I already have the contractor lined up. Like, I didn't go through a bid process or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm using a reputable company that has a history with historical rehabs.
But not a history with this building, this project at this point. Like, he's not your contractor of record.
Technically, well, I don't have a contract. It's the same architects and construction company. They're all in one
Okay.
company.
Well,
And I've been working with them for over a year now.
on this building.
On this building.
Well, I mean, that is a case then. I mean, we would want to, I mean, I'm kind of trying to think about that one question, Patrick.
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to chat later. I don't want to take up time if others have questions. So.
Yeah, I think if you're shovel ready and you were planning to start, you know, soon this season, unless there's something that's really at the end of the project that takes a specialty to come in and do it, you know, that you can pull out. Maybe you could find something like that. I mean, if you have somebody who's coming in to do terrazzo floors or something, that might be a way to do it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll discuss it with them. And then I have a historic consultant working on this as well. So we can try to
there
figure
might be
out
something. And I mean, in some cases, developers are like, I'm just going to pull out that small piece, that, you know, $50,000 piece, just because it will be helpful to the bottom line. But
Right. Well, and
Um,
yeah, we haven't submitted our part 2 yet, so maybe we could still pull something out. So
Okay. So call us, Patrick, get in touch
Sure.
after you have some of your meetings, and I'll jump to other questions from people who are here if you're good with that.
perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Delilah.
You, hi. Um, I, I might have missed this slide. Does one have to be the owner of the building to apply?
Who is the owner? And I can tell you how it works.
Port Property owns the building.
The owner needs to submit I believe in
That's
the
what it
past.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the owner needed to submit a letter acknowledging that they would be willing to sign a easement on the building.
Okay, cool. And then the other thing is, I spent 5 months on a federal grant last year that it
Yeah.
turned out at the end had a 3% chance of winning. And that was a pretty big time investment. So do you have thoughts about like, what's the probability? How many of these are going to be funded?
Well, I mean, we have $600,000 to give away, which isn't a lot in preservation construction. I'm not going to lie. In the past, I think, to remember the numbers, Christy, I mean, was it like we had like 12 applications and funded 4?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I think maybe the most applications we've had were 15, but of those, some of them were incomplete or ineligible. So yeah, I think let's see. The first time around, we had 6 funded applications. The second time we had 4.
4, right,
Mhm.
right. And it's roughly
Cool.
the same amount of money that we have to pass through. So it's not 3% as far as, the
Right.
award rate to the
Much better
request
than
rate.
3%.
It's way better.
Yes.
I mean, there were a lot of people here today, but we also know that weirdly, there were some out-of-state people who are looking at how Maine is rolling out our program, and they were here to observe. They're not going to apply. So don't take the
Yes.
number 40 and be like, oh my God. Yeah, hard question. I mean, I'm certainly, willing at a later date when we get closer to give you a better indication. But of course, I don't want you to be like, oh, I'll wait till the last minute, because this isn't that kind of application.
Yeah. No, this just kind of, there's a lot of things to weigh, and I don't even know
Yeah.
if we're completely eligible and if they want to do
Okay.
this or anything. But I just kind of before
Yeah.
I wanted to invest time, I just got to see,
Yep. Fair question.
Okay,
Okay.
great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll
Thanks
ring
for
off.
coming. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Patrick Myers, do you have a question? You're still here, or are you there? There's our Center
Hey there.
Theater
No,
representative.
I'm just kind of lurking and listening and seeing how things are going. And
Okay.
no
Well,
no
you
particular
Hi, Patrick.
question.